Yeah, dear viewers, we have with us John Neuffer, President and CEO of Semiconductor Industry Association. It's a technology, public policy, and trading think tank working with India government and Indian association called IESA also. Sir, just to give us an overview of the current Indian scenario where semiconductor industry is bubbling with a lot of activities. Now it is valued at 40 billion and it will reach up to 100 billion by 2030. So what's your take on India's journey in this semiconductor industry?
First of all, it's a very exciting time to be here. It's a very exciting moment in the semiconductor industry generally.
Okay.
But with India looking to have a bigger footprint in manufacturing, and with the increasing embrace between our two governments, I think there's a lot of opportunity, our view is, with the right policy mix in place, the sky is the limit for India, but we got to have the right policy mix in place.
Okay. Sir, John Neuffer has made it very clear that we should have a right policy mix so that we should have our first chip out in the market, made in India tag. So as per your assumption, when will India get first made in India chip?
So I'm very bad at reading crystal balls, so I'm not going to make that guess, but I think not too distant future. One thing I have tried to underscore is that every country, whether it's Korea or Japan or Taiwan, as they move into our supply chains, take smallish bites at the apple and slowly move up.
Okay.
And I think it's great for India to have an aspiration for someday having a $10-20 billion fab. But for the time being, I think India needs to be more practical and focus on perhaps so-called legacy chips. Focus on assembly, test, and package, like the Micron announcement. But let's not forget India's strong in design. 20% of the global design, semiconductor global design force is here.
Correct.
India should make sure that stays strong as well.
Okay.
One other thing I'd like to add is to be successful in the semiconductor industry, there has to be a comprehensive, systematic approach to developing a whole ecosystem. And that involves the right infrastructure, it involves the right manufacturing incentives, regulatory coherence, predictability, transparency, good trade policy, zero in, zero out, tariff treatment at the border, and these all need to come together in a beautiful dance, in a comprehensive way, if you're going to build a successful semiconductor ecosystem.
Okay, very good. Sir, the point is that the Prime Minister Modi has come up with a leadership and policy framework like PLI schemes and other things, and direct engagement with the U.S. government. So how do you find the government's initiative, how it is gelling with SIA's scheme of things?
So I can't overstate how important it is for leadership at the top to put a focus on a program like this. Our CHIPS Act, our $52.7 billion CHIPS Act, had strong support from President Biden. It had strong support from leadership in the Senate, top leadership in the Senate, strong support from top leadership in the House. And without that top leadership, that top kind of political momentum and imposing political will, we wouldn't have gotten the CHIPS Act. And similarly, your Prime Minister has taken the bull by the horns and said, this must get done. And I think that's made a huge difference and helped your bureaucracy focus and work to wipe away red tape to help make sure this program gets off the ground successfully.
So you have used a very nice word, red tapeism, in India. So having said that, we want to access some of the critical technologies which are involved in semiconductor manufacturing. So how we can harness it what is the guidance that you want to give it to government of India, and how to eradicate this red tapeism? What are the things they can do? What is an SIA's take on that guideline to the government of India and your counterpart IESA in India?
Yeah, so our industry for decades has been relatively unregulated. And that's allowed us to flourish and innovate. There is certainly a role for government, though, and we would never deny that, to set the right kind of tax policy, to put incentives in place that are necessary. Certainly in one of our most challenging areas, which is workforce development or skilling, we play a big role in that, no doubt. As an industry, when we go into a region, a locality, we work with universities to get curricula in place, but government also needs to play a big role. And as I mentioned in my remarks earlier today, it's just critically important. There's a public-private partnership approach to workforce development.
Okay. So the point is that in IT and ITES area, especially software development, we have a lot of GCCs in India where Fortune 500 companies have set up their centers, R&D centers, etc. And that is flourishing and booming in India. So it is a time-tested business and industry. So similarly, we want the semiconductor to be like that on equal footing. So from that perspective, that software industry took 2-3 decades to flourish, but we want to leapfrog in semiconductor industry. Can we do it? Is it doable? Is it achievable?
Yeah. So I heard the word leapfrog a couple of times today in the conference, and I think in some ways that's possible, but generally you just got to do the hard work, and you gotta kind of pay your professional dues and show the world that that you can do it. And as I said, taking smaller bites at the apple before you get there. I think it's a little risky to try to set an expectation like we're going to get we want a $20 billion high-end logic fab, because it's going to be very difficult to achieve. And I just think that it should be a methodical, step-by-step approach.
Okay, very good. So having said that, recently India became one of the largest manufacturer of mobile phones. So it is also very much related to semiconductor industry. So can we replicate that in other areas? What is your sense on these kind of things, and also the geopolitics in China? Because a lot of countries are withdrawing from China.
Yeah.
So how do you fly?
I just want to say on the rebalancing. I think for a long time, India has had a lot of opportunities presented with the rebalancing, and I think that it's happening apace now.
Okay.
And I really hope that India can take the right steps to take advantage of the situation. And in our sector, in corporate boardrooms, there's just a lot of thinking about how to de-risk. Coming off the pandemic, we all learned, most people didn't understand how important semiconductors are to their daily lives, but we all learned how important they are for national security and economic security. But we also learned, for example, that there's probably way too much concentration of semiconductor manufacturing in East Asia. We need to spread things out a little bit, and that's one of the reasons we got the CHIPS Act. There was recognition that the kind of lack of semiconductor manufacturing in the U.S. and how it's declined over the decades is not great. So we do not in the U.S. ever intend to have the whole supply chain inside U.S. borders. That would be prohibitively expensive and be a real drag on our innovation. Our industry has been so breathtakingly successful for two fundamental reasons. One is our deep commitment to innovation and R&D. roughly, in the U.S. industry, roughly $1.05 from sales goes back into R&D.
Okay.
We are one of the most R&D intensive industries in the world. So that's the one side of it. The other side of it is we've been able to build these incredibly efficient supply chains around the world and take advantage of comparative advantage. And if those supply chains are somehow seriously in jeopardy, then that's really going to hurt our industry's ability to innovate and thrive.
Okay.
So, and that goes back to the diversification point. We've been kind of over-concentrated in some areas, and we need to think about how to diversify the risk and spread it around. And that's what's been happening.
Okay.
And
So-
with that, there's a lot of opportunities for India, I think.
So the point is that India set up its first fab. It's for defense purpose and at Mohali with the help of Israel and Tower Semiconductor. And we had an expectation that Tower will set up a new fab here, but that didn't take off. So it's all because of regulatory issues. I don't know what happened. You know better.
Actually, I don't know any better. You probably know better than I do.
So,
yeah.
So that didn't materialize. So we do hope this year or next year, India will get a favorable atmosphere. So a lot more companies will come here and set up the fab manufacturing facility. As you said, there is complex what they call ecosystem involved. For example, with the machineries involved, complex chemicals involved. How do you gauge India's current ecosystem? How far it is matured on those supply
Yeah,
chain?
so
issues?
I think it's come a long way. I think there's growing awareness that, on how to build that ecosystem, but there's definitely room for improvement. I mentioned trade policy earlier. It's very important. You got to have customs policies in place that help us be able to plug in effectively to our global supply chains. And part of that also is, we move goods across border, but we move a tremendous amount of data across border. And right now, the WTO World Trade Organization is looking at whether to extend or not extend this thing called the e-commerce moratorium, which says no tariffs on cross-border data flows.
Okay.
We are a big fan of that because we rely very much on cross-border data flows. In a lot of ways, we send data across borders. But, for example, design. India, tremendous amount of design here. These designs go around the world 24/7. They spend some time in India, then they go somewhere else, and they're slowly developed. And the prospect that data could get hit with taxes is very chilling to us. And we've been strongly supportive of extending this moratorium. And I know India has had some reservations, and we really hope that at the WTO meeting in Abu Dhabi in February, that this moratorium can be extended. The head of the WTO actually asked me to come out and speak at a forum there, and I will definitely speak about this. So this would, we think that would be a very strong shot in the arm for India's commitment to building the right ecosystem here, would be to work to extend the moratorium, the e-commerce moratorium.
Okay. And recently, India imposed import duty on some of the laptops and mobiles, and WTO has slapped some another conviction on that, ITA 1 and all. So what is your take on that? How should government
again, not
deal
very
with
excited with that. No one else in the ITA community is putting tariffs on cell phones. And we feel that that probably wasn't the right move, and we hope that can be remedied. It's just, the ITA for us is the most important trade agreement.
Okay.
And countries that adhere to the ITA and support it are countries that we do business in. And lots of countries like Malaysia and Vietnam, and the Philippines have been strong adherents of the ITA. They've thrived. Their electronics industry has thrived. And I know there's an interpretation among some in India that somehow India joining the ITA was a mistake, and I just cannot agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So recently, I think last year you considered a committee along with IESA, I believe, to look into this semiconductor ecosystem. So what is the outcome of that mutual study report? Or
Yeah, we're still working to try to complete it, and we think it could be a very useful tool
Okay, sir.
to show, kind of highlight the progress that's been made so far, but also identify a few areas where there needs to be some improvement. And I've talked about them already. It's mostly with trade policy and things like that.
Okay, very
Yeah.
good. So John Neuffer is very optimistic that India's time has arrived in the semiconductor industry space, and we do hope that India will get its first fab at the earliest with the help of SIA. Going forward, we'll have a good relation with SIA, and Neuffer will come to India frequently to lead the country from the front to reach greater heights. Thank you, Neuffer.
So we're in the policy business. We're not in the fab construction business. But we very much are honored to be a part of this great adventure that India is undertaking to try to work to be a bigger part of our supply chain. We think India will be successful, and we're just very happy with the general direction of what the government's trying to do.
Thank you, John,
Thank you.
to talk to NFA Positive.
Thank you. It was a fabulous interview. Thank you. Really appreciate it.